Tighten your lines as we get ready to sail the 7 seas on the Political Pirate Podcast. Join Captain Ted Yoho and the salty dog John Martin as they search far and wide for the greatest treasure of all, the truth. From local Florida news to nationwide stories and the globe beyond, we've got it all mapped out. Now here's your hosts, the salty dog John Martin and Captain Ted Yoho.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the 3 Ps, the Political Pirate Podcast with yours truly, the old salty dog, John Martin, and, of course, the captain of our pirate ship, none other than Mr. Ted Yoho. Good morning, Ted. How the heck are you?
I'm doing great, John. I enjoy your introduction there, man. It just pumps me up. Good to see you.
You too. Well, I tell you, if you're wondering why we're at a different time, it's we're live today at 10:30. We're normally at 9, but it's not a permanent move. But we got bumped, Ted, by none other than the new when it comes to Florida, there really isn't a choice there, but we were happy to give him the spot there. But the only thing I would say about that, Ted, is by bumping us, and Coach Summerall, if you're listening, this just puts even more pressure on you to deliver the wins when the season starts.
That's right. I'm honored to be bumped by him, and I got my Gator shirt on today, if you could see it, and wish you the best. Welcome to the Gator Nation, and looking for you to making it strong.
Absolutely. I mean, and all he's got to do is try to follow the basketball team right now, because the Gators are clearly a basketball university right now, and because there's nobody playing better than our team right now, and who knows what the future holds. They could go back to back. We'll see.
They could. Bring some of that mojo to the football team and bring us back to where we're supposed to be on top of that.
Well, speaking of a great team, we got a great team here, Ted. You and I and the Political Pirate Podcast and all the people that make it so. And we want you to join our team and support the cause. Let's keep this mission going forward. You'll see this little tagline, Call Freddie. Make that call and become part of our team. And Ted, I want to share something with you very quickly.
Before you go there,
go ahead.
One, come all, and you don't need to bring a driver's license.
Absolutely. It's not like you're shoveling snow in New York or anything, right? But I wanted to share something with you. You know, the young man that you met a while back and up in D.C., he sent me a message on our Facebook page. He did.
Michael Cruz.
And I responded to him. He talked about how much of an honor it was to meet you, and he's starting to get to know me a little bit, and he really enjoys the show. And he shares it far and wide now. And a lot of young people, this is a young high school gentleman, and he said a lot of his friends are starting to watch it. So good morning to all of them out there. I'm sure they watch it after school or before school. But I really appreciated that young man's message to me, and I responded back to it, Ted.
That's great that you did that, and I appreciate it. Michael, if you're listening or you're going to watch us, thank you for doing that. And again, thank your parents for bringing you up to the Capitol to meet. It was truly an honor of mine. And the thing I was impressed with is the youth of America. A lot of people talk about how Generation Z is lost. No, they're not. They're looking for direction. They're looking for leadership. And out of that will come leaders for the future that'll bring this country back to where it's supposed to be in the grounding of the philosophies and the ideologies of the Constitution, the founding principles and the core values. And I'm honored that you're sharing this, and we appreciate it. Keep doing the good work.
Absolutely. Well, that kind of is a perfect segue, as you always do, to our first topic today. And I kind of label it, is a question. I like to ask questions. Is the state of our union strong? And I think that the president said it is, and I believe that it is, but is it going to stay strong? Well, a lot of this will be up to the young people, like you were saying. So it does do my heart good to have young people actually paying attention. You said that you thank the parents for bringing them up to D.C. And when you said that, it made me think, I just thank them for bringing him up, the
Absolutely.
way he's going to be, because that's what really needs to happen. And that's kind of what couple of old grandpas, kind of like what we are, Ted, are trying to do here with the Political Pirate Podcast, is pass on the blessings, the knowledge we have that has been bestowed upon us from former generations. You know, we're products of the greatest generation, as they label them, our parents and that kind of thing. And we just want to keep this thing going. We want to be that bridge between how a founding of our country and the young people that are just looking at their cell phones like this all the time. That's really my mission. I know you share it.
Well, that's a great point you bring up. The blessings that we've been bestowed upon us. Carolyn and I, our story. We came from nothing, and we lived the American dream. We built the American dream, and we were able to do that because of an opportunity that are enshrined in the Constitution. And if it wasn't for the maintenance of the Constitution and those principles that I talk about all the time, opportunity would be gone. If you grew up in China, you don't have this opportunity. If you grew up in Cuba, you don't have these opportunities. This country has allowed so much for so many, and it's our duty to preserve that for the next generation. Not only preserve it, but to make it better. And there's one side of politics that is truly destroying that. And I know you're going to play some sound bites in that and some videos from that. And it's just such a stark contrast how these people that don't applaud America and the greatness of it, how they're in politics. And I saw a video today that Carolyn shared with me from a 1995 speech by Bill Clinton, the State of the Union. And you contrast that with Donald Trump today, and it's his State of the Union and the response on the Democrat side. And it was about immigration. So I look forward to getting on with the show. And again, Michael, thank you for sharing this far and wide. And we look forward to talking to you more in the future.
Well, Ted, you know what was interesting to me at the very beginning of the State of the Union, before it actually started, I had it set to record, and I took the time to kind of flip around the dials, CNN, MS Now, all that kind of stuff, just to see what they were saying leading up to the speech. And I tried to find it so I could play it, but I couldn't. But I tell you, man, people, if you can find this, you really need to see the intro to the program of the State of the Union speech on MS Now. Sounded like something from a movie or something, it was so diabolical. Like, it had this menacing music. It wasn't just saying a State of the Speech. They weren't even just being critical of Donald Trump or, maybe laying out some expectations. They were literally saying, as a president who is underwater in all these different categories, who is leading a divided nation. It just went on and on like that. A president who is this or that, the other. It was just, it wasn't a news thing. It was literally like the intro to some type of science fiction movie.
Well, they're trying to paint a bad narrative. Contrast that back to Joe Biden when he had the military and that red background, and it just looked really ominous, almost like authoritarianism. And they applaud that when that was really kind of a scary intro. The hypocrisy that they have is it's off the scale. And I think you've seen where Larry Ellison of Oracle and his son are buying the station that runs CNN. So it's going to be an interesting thing how the news feeds change. And we don't want controlled by any party or anybody. We want free and open and fair and believable news. We don't want it slanted. We just want the facts. And hopefully we'll get that.
You mentioned that about CNN, and I didn't actually watch the video of it, but I saw a little blurb about Jake Tapper, and I guess maybe Larry Ellison was at their studio, or maybe one of the Oracle representatives, and right. He literally live on the air said something about, well, I have to kind of break news. We're being taken over by MAGA, and I'm paraphrasing what he said. And my thoughts when I first read that, because I didn't see the video, is he must be thinking he's going to get fired and he needs to be a YouTube influencer or something like that, because why would you say that about the new person coming in? Wouldn't you give them the chance to maybe keep you? But maybe he's trying to go the way of Joy Reid or something, which I would warn him is not very good direction to go in. It was interesting.
I don't think I'd want to go that way. Well, if you're fair and balanced and you report the news without editorializing it, let the audience opinionate on their own and come up with their own definition of what that news is. And so if he's doing that, he has nothing to worry about. It was interesting because when we hired people, we had people that we laid out what our stance was in the office, and we told them we're strong on the conservative side, and we believe in the Constitution. And if you don't believe in that, that's fine. You're probably not going to be happy working here, but we'll let you come in. And we had some people leave. They said we were too far to the right, and that's fine. But I was not going to change my message. I didn't expect them to. I just, if they're going to be here, they're going to represent what we stood for in our office. So that's the same way with what's going on with CNN. We'll see how it shakes out, but I think it can only shake out for the better because you and I have both watched that, and we have seen such strong slanted stories that they sway the truth, and they don't give the accurate narrative of a story. They want their opinion in there, and it's interesting. And you've seen this. So many times, the talking points on one liberal station is the same exact talking points on all the other ones. And we just have to be careful that we're not doing that. We appreciate people's opinions, but don't slant the truth.
Yeah, well, before we get into the actual speech, Ted, I wanted to ask your opinion on something. As somebody who's literally sat there as a member of Congress, the whole shenanigans they pull, that is a separate issue from what I'm about to say, and we'll talk about that. But the mere fact that I think it was 78 members of Congress, combined Senate and House Democrats, and there may have been a Republican or two that missed for whatever reason, but I'm talking about just flat out boycotted it. And to me, the shenanigans is one thing, but to literally not show up unless you have some type of emergency or medical or family situation is a dereliction of duty to me. And we're paying these people. We're actually literally paying these people to be there. And I'm thinking as a business owner myself, that if my workforce decided they were just going to not show up, well, the job still goes on and I'd have to replace them. So to me, and I'd say the same thing about Republicans, if you're not going to show up for your job, then at the very least you shouldn't get paid, but really you should be fired.
I don't have a problem with that. And that power to fire those is not in government. It is we, the people. And I think those representatives that did that, the bad thing, John, not only did they boycott it, they ran an alternative one that was not very well viewed, and it was kind of a flop. But they went out there to have their own, and I think it's just bad form on their side because they're not part of a Team America. They're part of Team Dissent, and they want to do more division in this country, and we can't. This country is as divided as I've ever seen in my lifetime. We want people to stop thinking party politics. We want people to think at this point in time, with all the geopolitics that are going on, Russia, China, Iran, Cuba, we want people to come together as Americans and forget your party politics. It's time to think and put America first.
Yeah, but let's get into the speech just a little bit.
Absolutely.
So, before we get into real details, what was your overall thoughts about the actual speech itself? And we'll get into the details and the shenanigans in a minute. But the message that Mr. Trump put out there, what was your overall thought of that?
I was on Chris Evans, I think it was Friday last week, and he asked the same question. What is your expectation? I said, my expectation is that the president comes out with a unifying message of bringing America together, point out some of the flaws, but then paints a picture of where we're going. And I think he pretty much accomplished that. I mean, he did it in Trump style, which we all know was going to happen. But I think him celebrating the greatness of America by celebrating those military veterans that were right at 100 years of age, that were in World War II, that had those being shot down. That one guy the plane had 250 some holes in it, and he survived. The people that went in and took Maduro and captured Maduro, what that pilot of the helicopter went through, celebrating that. I mean, those things are just incredible, and have the hockey team there. That's America. That's American pride that everybody should be embracing. And we saw the Democrats stood up for the hockey team, but for the other ones, they were just shunning that. And I think that's a disgrace. Not only to the veterans, but it's a disgrace to their party and to the people that elected them. And for the ones that boycotted it, those people shouldn't be in office.
Well, you mentioned several of the different people that were there, and that kind of goes back to something I said at the beginning of the show. If you want to know the people that I was raised by, as this little town of Hawthorne, those two gentlemen that were 100 years old, one from the Korean War and the other one, I think maybe World War II, one of the last surviving people. Those are the people that I was raised by. So if you want to know why I feel the way I feel about America, those two gentlemen right there, and of course the young guy that got the Medal of Honor too, but I'm saying that is the generation that raised me. And in a small town like Hawthorne, it was all the people. I mean, literally, I grew up at the American Legion here in Hawthorne, really, and that kind of thing. So that shaped my whole view of America, no doubt. And I feel sad.
Job to make it better. And with each generation, our goal should be to make it better. And I think at times you do go through some rough spots. When I grew up, I was born in 55 and grew up through the 60s, and we had the civil rights, you had Vietnam, you had all those things. But it seems as we went through those strifes, we came out better. What I'm seeing now is where we're at today. It's a continuation from one angry moment, like George Floyd, moving on, Black Lives Matter, Antifa. It just seems to be escalating and building on that. And that's what I see in Congress. And hence, that's why you had 79 members boycott this instead of staying in there and hearing the message, responding to the message. And then if you don't like it, do something about it, but just don't avoid it.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to take this opportunity to take a little bit of an early break so that we can come back and dive into the speech itself without really interruption. So remember to call Freddie, be on our team, and Ted, take us to break, and we'll come back and get into the speech.
No, we really depend on you guys getting our word out. Take our podcast, take the links, spread them out to your friends far and wide, and we'll be right back. And we're just honored to be able to be tied into the Steve Spurrier Gridiron Grill in Gainesville. It's a memorabilia and a museum of Gator greatness in sports. And he's done a great job. And again, we're honored to bow out and let Coach Summerall have this 9 o'clock spot. Yeah.
Although the owner of Lewis Oil Company maintains she is 29, Lewis Oil turns 60 years old in June. Chevron would like to recognize the North.
Hi there, this is Coach Steve Spurrier, and I want to let you know that by popular demand, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill's delicious brunch is now served in a premium buffet. You have spoken, we have listened, and we're now serving Gainesville's only elevated buffet, complete with an omelet station, ginger sage chicken sausage, shredded short rib, plus you can enjoy bottomless mimosas and Bloody Marys. So join us every Saturday and Sunday from 11 to 3 for the best brunch in town.
And there you saw because I almost said earlier, the head ball coach was Summerall, but there's only one head ball coach, and that is none other than Mr. Steve Spurrier, who you saw in that commercial.
You know what's interesting? Yeah, thanks, Coach Spurrier. When I was coming down one of the offices there, one of the congressional offices, his name came up, and people were just touting what a great coach he was, what a great athlete, and that was in the halls of Washington D.C., where he's thought very highly of, and as he should be. So we're honored to be associated with his restaurant and memorabilia at the Steve Spurrier Gridiron Grill.
Absolutely. Well, let's get into the speech a little bit, Ted, because to me, the overall theme of that really was USA, USA, to me. And that's the way it should be, regardless of the politics of it. It should be about the state of the union, which is the United States of America. And of course, you had Rashid Tlaib literally chanting KKK, KKK during that thing, which is crazy in and of itself. But the whole thing where they brought the men's hockey team down, and I know there's all this supposed manufactured controversy about the women's hockey team, but that they couldn't be there is what I've been told. And I thought the way the president orchestrated that, if you want to, choreographed it really, where they came down and where that area is where the media people, how they were able to come out was just amazing.
It really was. And, I think the thing that I was hoping, and I saw it, was, being the pride of being an American, being proud of your country, being proud of the accomplishments. It's not about him and the president. It's about the hockey team. It's about the people that saved the lives, like the young Coast Guard personnel that saved all the people at that terrible flood out in Texas. Honoring people in America and showing the greatness of America, how we come together as a nation. And you mentioned Tlaib. They're just disarticulated with America. They've disconnected with the greatness of America because they don't like it. They want it to be, in their eyes, a Venezuelan, in their mind, a utopian socialist country. That'll never happen. Socialism doesn't work. You get these people. We just got back from Europe, Carolyn and I, and people talk about, well, we should have health care like Europe. Give me a break. They're taxed at about 40-50%. If they want to get into a doctor faster, they buy their own insurance. Most people have paying for insurance outside of the free health care because the free health care doesn't work right. It takes forever. And so they're being taxed probably by the time you throw your insurance, they're probably 60-65%. And so it's not really free. But the Tlaibs and that, and Ilhan Omar, and of course, everything they do is free because they're stealing it from the American taxpayers in a fraud. But AOC, we want free. We want free. And I shared with you before that when we were on there, we rode public transportation, trains and buses. Guess what? We had to pay for that. And Zohran Madani's telling everybody they're going to be free and faster, their buses. No, they're not. And the people that fell for that and voted for them, you're going to have awakening.
Yeah, they're beginning to already. But, I've said this before, but as I say, if I say it, it bears repeating. The biggest actual issue with the socialized medicine that I never hear anybody talk about is the innovation or lack thereof. You look at like France, you look at like Europe. It used to lead the world in medical breakthroughs and innovation. I mean, going back several hundred years, they did. When was the last time you heard of a new therapy, a new medicine, or something like that coming out of a socialized country? They don't do that anymore. They still come from the United States, and they still come from like India and places like that because there's no incentive to bring up something new. There's no incentive.
No.
And so we're actually, free health care is going to cost us our health in the long run.
No, it's a race to the status quo, to mediocrity. Sometimes it's a race to the bottom, because there's no incentive, like you said. I just got back. I was up in D.C. for 3 days. Yesterday, I spent I was at a consortium of biotech companies and all the new innovations that are coming out. And it's interesting how many philanthropies in the Bill Gates Foundation. Bill Gates has got a bad rap right now, but yet he has put money, millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. We ran across a guy that got a $55 million grant from the Gates Foundation on a new way to administer vaccines that don't need to be cold stored. And these are the innovations that are going on in America, and it's being funded by the billionaires, John, the billionaires. Those toxic billionaires. And, they don't get credit for that. And of course, that's a whole nother discussion. But what we're seeing and what I saw out of that, the State of the Union, was the direction of America, the greatness of America, overlooking our shortcomings and acknowledging them, but let's make it stronger and better for the next generations. And that's where people like Michael Cruz and people that he shared this with, that's the message that needs to get out. We need to fight harder now than we ever have to preserve the foundation principles and the core values and preserve the Constitution, because without that, the game is over, and we don't want that over. We want to build on this and make it better.
Yeah, well, the billionaires, there are two people I know that don't like billionaires, and that is AOC and Bernie Sanders, and they have another thing in common. I don't think they like you, Ted, so you must be a billionaire.
God bless them. I got no hard feelings for them. Even though my conversation with the latter one brought many death threats and all kinds of things and public scorn, that's okay. I forgive her.
I understand.
Her day will come, and I think it did at Munich when she had the headlight looks of Teddy Kennedy when they asked him, "Why do you want to be president?" And he kind of looked like the deer in the headlight. And we've seen this over and over again. They're clueless, and she'll eliminate herself is what's going to happen, because people will see who she is.
Yeah, absolutely.
People don't like fraudsters and phonies, and eventually they'll be found out.
Well, I think that the main mission of Donald Trump, or it should have been, and I think he accomplished this to a certain extent, and we'll have to wait to see, is all about the midterms. Let's just tell it like it is. Politics.
It is. It really is
about that. So it's about the midterms. And I think, just like Kamala Harris had that moment on The View when she said, "I can't think of anything I would change under Biden." And people say that was one of the major turning points in that. I think if the Republicans can pull off and hold on to the House and Senate in the midterms, it could be this next video that we're going to play that Donald Trump set up perfectly that might actually be that turning point. So let's play it, and then we'll go ahead, Ted.
Well, no, I want people to look at the dichotomy in two different ideological thoughts of America when you play this, and we'll talk about it when we come back.
Yeah, check this out.
Then stand up and show your support. The first duty of the American government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens. Isn't that a shame? You should be ashamed of yourself not standing up. You should be ashamed of yourself. That is why I'm also asking you to end deadly sanctuary cities that protect the criminals and enact serious penalties for public officials who block the removal of criminal aliens. In many cases, drug lords, murderers all over our country, they're blocking the removal of these people out of our country, and you should be ashamed of yourself.
Well, like I said, Ted, I really believe that right there, if they can pull off and hold on to the House and Senate, that little segment right there could be that turning point for them, because, I just don't see how they could have fallen for that, How can you not stand up right there? And I watched some of them. I've watched it several times, and I saw a few of them looking at their neighbor next to us and thinking, I think they were thinking about standing up, but they were like, well, he's not standing up. I can't do it. They didn't want to be that one person that was isolated, so they chose to sit down. And if you don't get anything else out of the speech, I'd like somebody to explain how you can support anybody who couldn't stand for what the president pointed out there.
No, I agree with you 100%. And again, that's the dichotomy. When they focused on Mark Kelly, you talk about a sour puss, somebody that's just angry, and they're talking about he may be a candidate for president. I don't want that guy. He's got such a disdain for Trump that it affects his ability to govern. And I think of those words of Susan Rice last week when we played that clip of hers. These people that stand behind Trump and corporations that won't challenge him, you're going to have your day in court when we get back in power. That's the attitude Mark Kelly had. And I appreciate his service in the military and as an astronaut, but I don't want you running my country. And I think what Trump did, and I think with him calling the Democrats out like he did, I think he answered or did what a lot of Americans want. call them out for not standing up and doing what's right. Whether you like, it's not about Trump. It's about the people he talked about immigration. And I think we should show maybe on Monday the video of Bill Clinton in 1995 giving a stronger speech on immigration and getting illegals, and he called them illegal aliens. They got to get out of here. They're overriding our welfare system and all these things and causing crime. Democrats stood up, the Republicans stood up in unison, agreeing with that. Now, how did we change 30 years later to where the Democrats have become so divided that 79 didn't show up, and the other ones would get up and applaud because of that, what Trump is trying to do? I mean, thank God he came into office and he closed those borders where we don't have a continual influx of immigrants. We all want immigrants, but we want them to come legally, and this is where Congress has failed. And when I was in there, this was one of the biggest headaches we had, is trying to get consensus on building a workable immigration system, because it became so polarized that if you wanted sensical immigration legally, that you were deemed a racist and a xenophobic and all that. And it's garbage, because politics gets played, nothing gets solved. Sorry, I ran it.
That's quite all right. But you mentioned President Clinton. We may have planned to talk about him on Monday, because he's testifying in a closed hearing today following Hillary yesterday on the Epstein files. So that might be interesting to see what spills out of that. We'll see. But Ted, I want, you and I, if people think, oh, well, they think exactly alike or something like that, which we both know is not true. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. So I want to say something about what really upsets me. And I know you don't feel exactly like this, but I'll let you. But to me, the thing that disappoints me the most, beyond just the obvious that they're anti-American and all that, the Democrats, it taints my whole view of the Democratic Party to a point. And I grew up with the Democratic Party. I come from a long line of leaders in the Democratic Party. Everybody talks about my dad, but my aunt, his sister, was a delegate to the 1960 Democratic Convention that nominated JFK, and she drove all the way across the United States of America to San Francisco, I believe it was, with my oldest brother when he was just a young pup, way before I was born in 1960. So I come from a long line of people that do that. And I have voted for people across the aisles. My first president that I ever voted for when I was eligible to vote was Reagan. But I shared with you a while back that I actually voted for Jesse Jackson in a primary, not because I thought he was going to win, really, but because I thought he was the only one actually telling him what he really believed. And the rest of them were just saying what they want. So I would like to be able to make a decision to vote for a Democrat if I wanted to. But right now, Ted, based on what I'm seeing, I just can't. Even if it's a good, solid person, I can't bring myself to even consider it, because of the way they're acting right now.
No, absolutely not. Sense? I mean, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I voted for Jimmy Carter my first presidential election. And I voted for Ross Perot, because I want people that are going to represent this country. And, I failed with Jimmy Carter. There were several things he did good, but several things like giving away the Panama Canal and the Iran the Iranian oil crisis debacle. But too many times, and I've heard this so many times, that it's the party of big politics. They present you with a candidate. And I think at where we're at today, you're going to see people starting to not pick a candidate because of party affiliation, but you're going to see them taking a stand for somebody that says it's got to be about America at this point in time. Like I said, we've got our internal division in this country that's larger than I've ever seen. But then you look at the external threats that are coming to this country, and these are real threats. Like I said, I just got back from DC, and the rhetoric I'm hearing up there is stronger than I've ever heard about impending things that are going to happen. And, this is a time we all need to come together as an American and make this country stronger and less dependent on other countries like critical minerals and pharmaceuticals and AI and the infiltration of our system by adversarial countries and the cybersecurity threats that we're under. So We need a strong leader, and the best way to do this and to keep this country safe is peace through strength.
Yeah, you mentioned Jimmy Carter, and something that's interesting about that was the last time and the first time I think that the American men's hockey team won the gold medal was during his presidency.
Sure was.
And Walter there's a documentary I think on Netflix about it. But Walter Mondale was actually at vice president in the stands when they won that gold medal, and was in the locker room. I don't know if he had a beer with them like like our FBI director Patel, but Jimmy Carter phoned in to the locker room and congratulated them as well. And there was no controversy about that. He had him back at the White House very shortly after that, and there was no controversy about that. But Trump does essentially the exact same thing, and it's nothing but controversy. And the most unfortunate part of this is that people are trying to taint the U.S. hockey players and divide them, the men and the women, based on Trump derangement syndrome. It's just ridiculous.
Well, they really do. And, Trump said that the women's hockey team didn't have the money to come up there. I don't know what, but he says they're going to have them in the White House. So, it's going to happen. It would have been great if they were there, but I don't feel bad that they weren't there. I wouldn't have felt bad if the men's weren't there, but I'm just glad they're recognizing them and they're getting their due recognition, as they should, because they represented America and they were proud to do it. But for the liberal media, and this is why CNN has gotten picked up by somebody else, they want to make that division, because if they don't have that division, they can't sell news to the people that buy the ads. And so they have to have that division, so they get that angry base that gets in there and keeps them on the TV. The American people, I think, are fed up with that. We got enough of that on social media, and we need to start just looking at what we're doing in our daily lives. And I know you've got something coming up on your next topic here, so I'll be quiet here.
Yeah, well, I want to give people quickly a couple of poll numbers. CNN actually does a pretty good job of polling, it seems like, these days. But they said that before the speech, that 44% of Americans across political lines believed that Donald Trump was focusing on the right issues going into the speech. After the speech, it shot up 10 points to 54%. So, I don't know if that bump will last, but that's the CNN's numbers, not mine. That's a pretty interesting jump right there.
It is, and then went up to 64%, didn't it? Percentage had risen to 64%.
Yeah,
am I reading that right?
That was the real percentage. Yeah, of people who watched the speech. Yeah, that was also 60. It was a slightly different part of the poll, but yes.
All right. So my takeaway from that is Trump played it well. He used it to his advantage, but he talked about the things of where America is going, talked about the greatness of the people that are here and where we're going, and he's painting a vision of where we're going. And this is something that I've harped on for years. We need a leader that's going to paint a picture of where America is going. We can acknowledge where we've been and shortfalls and failings we've had. I can't change that. I can only change where we're going, and we need to make it to where we're working stronger so that it is a better country for the next generations and to build on, not to go backwards.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier about the Democrat response, and I'm not talking about Miss Abigail, the new Virginia governor, God help Virginia, that did the official response, but the Democrats did a alternative show, and I'm just going to.
Well, they got alternative life. They're good about alternatives of everything.
Clip. I'm going to spare too much, but you said you were up in D.C. doing all this kind of stuff, Ted, and I think you might actually be in this video, but we'll play it and we'll come back and talk. This was part of the Democrat response. Check this out.
Let the frogs out.
I am present here to show Donald Trump and Republicans that we, the people, want them to uphold the Constitution.
We were just lobbying Congress people to remember their oath to the Constitution. It seems lately a lot of senators and House members have forgotten that they signed an oath to the Constitution to live by that document, not live by what some wannabe dictator is setting the rules are. A lot of movements like this need symbols that people can get behind. You can take down a person, but you can't take down a symbol, and anyone can wear them.
Oh, Ted, I only got one question. Which one of those frogs were you? With the pink
I was
one
squatting down. I made myself look like the shorter one, the green one.
I mean, you said you were up there and you saw them in the halls of Congress. I mean, Ted, I got to ask, who is this designed to move in a positive way? I don't, maybe I can't get it, but I don't see how that changes your mind in a positive way at all. I just don't get it.
Like I said, we were in the Senate building, the Hart building, and going to see a Democrat senator, and we saw these people in there, and we're like, what are they? And I'm asking the guards. They said, I don't know who they are, but they passed inspection, and they had their face covered. That's a no-no if you're a Democrat. Cover your face. Show your face. And we left, and we still didn't know what their purpose was. So I don't think they were very effective at what they were doing. I think you got another clip, don't you? A short one on the guy that was talking about that.
I think he already part of that one. I think it was.
All right. Well, wait a minute. Then I saw this on the news. Well, there's a guy that's part of that, and he's got his faces covered, like a COVID mask, the neckling thing that they wore in the beginning of COVID. So he's got that on there explaining why the frogs are there, because they're there to say, if you're serving in Congress, you must abide by the Constitution. Always like it when they're out of power, how you must abide by the Constitution. But he's got his face mask on, and I'm like, show us your face, and it's just the hypocrisy, John. It never ends. You don't see that on our side. And I shouldn't say our side. You don't see it on the other side. Again, I don't like sides. I like America. But, we just kind of talk about things as they are. We don't try to hide it or spin it. And so anyways, go on to the next section here. You got some good stuff coming up.
Before we do, I meant to mention this earlier. You mentioned the hero, the guy that was the Coast Guard guy that saved all those children and people out there in Texas. Did you know today is the first day they're not actually going to get paid? So we're not paying the Coast Guard starting today, or the TSA.
I have some family members. I have some family member in the Coast Guard, and some friends I know that are in there, and I'm well aware of that.
Yeah. So that shows you the honor, and then you can lay that all on the Democrats. But I got one more 100%. Question before we 100%. Move on, Ted. The biggest question I have about the midterm, I think Donald Trump, and he's campaigning for the midterms and all that, but I think that turning
I've never seen a president work like him. Yeah.
Right. But here's the question I have, and you're perfect to answer this because you always worked really hard in your elections, which is one of the reasons why you were so successful. But will the Republican candidates actually get out and work hard? I know individually some of them will, but I get the impression over the last few years that they've campaigned fairly lazily, but maybe that's just me.
Well, you know what? If they campaign lazily and they lose, they deserve to lose. Shame on them. This is a time they need to be out there hard. Everybody focuses on how much money you raise. Like, oh, look how much money I raised. That's why I deserve to be in office. The guy I ran a grants was a Republican that had $2.5 million in the bank, and we won. We didn't win huge, but we won. But then after that, we won every election hard. And I didn't raise a lot of money because my focus was on my district, meeting with our constituents. And if the Republicans would work at their district as hard as they work at raising money, they'll get elected. There's just way too much money in politics. But your question was, will they? I think they will, because they know it's theirs to lose. And if they lose, we know what's coming if they lose. You're going to go back to the Biden-Harris agenda that was directed by Barack Obama and the people behind Barack Obama. And you saw the tearing apart of this country. But when they get back in, they're going to run harder. They'll probably stack the Supreme Court and get rid of the filibuster. And that's just the beginning of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's shift gears a little bit in a way, but President Trump actually brought this up in his speech the other night, and he's done an executive order of this, but he wants it codified. And I got to tell you, I've got mixed feelings about this, and it's about corporations buying up individual houses or even subdivisions and then basically just making them total rentals. And the whole theory behind banning them is that this is causing, and I'm not saying this is not true, but this is causing people not to be able to buy houses. And of course, that is certainly the American dream. But Josh Hawley and Jeff Merkley, a Democrat of Oregon, and of course Mr. Hawley of Missouri, isn't it Missouri? I think. But they're
Yes.
actually sponsoring this bill, and it's called the Homes for America Families Act, and to ban Wall Street firms from buying houses. Dad, I got to tell you, and I'll get into why in a minute, but I got mixed feelings about this. I understand it from the perspective of trying to save it for the American dream, but I'm not a big fan of banning stuff. But tell me what you think about it.
No, I'm with you on that. I think if you look at our country, it's a capitalistic society. It was. I mean, the theory came from Adam Smith in *The Wealth of Nations* that was written back in, I think, the 1600s. And so we have built our nation, as other nations have, on that motto that you have capital investments that go into things that create the factories, that create the jobs, that create the income for people. And there's adjustments with unions and all that made it to where the working class got paid higher and higher. And so if you believe in that system, I believe that they have the right to do that. And I don't think it should be banned. However, is it the right thing for these big corporations to do that? Because we've got some rental properties up in the Georgia mountains, and what these corporations, like what Jeff Bezos is doing, and is it BlackRock? What they have done is they have gone in and bought in mass these rental properties. So it's driven the cost of these homes way up, and it's prevented people, like you said, from buying homes. I would think these companies would take it upon themselves saying, you know what, this is probably not the best thing to invest in. And I think they should back out of that. And I don't think there should be laws banning that, because if the government can ban that, what can they not ban? And I would just think these corporations would have their board meetings say, you know what, this is probably not the best thing to invest in. So that's where I stand on that, John.
Yeah, well, I think one of the potential solutions in that is about home ownership and homestead and property taxes and all of that. Potentially, one way to combat it without banning it is to, if you have an individual home, lessen or eliminate your taxes. But if you have a corporate home, raise those taxes up, because they're not individual homesteads, and that would the market. They would not be able to compete with individual homeowners. So I would rather see it go that way than some type of ban. And if they want to speculate in it and know they're going to be paying higher taxes because they don't actually homestead that property, I think that would be more effective myself.
Well, it is. And, that kind of happens now. The properties we have that they're not homesteaded, they're taxed at a higher rate, and we got to pay the insurance on them. And we don't get we don't get the benefit of home ownership. And I think that's a way that you could make it less appealing for these corporations. If you've got these things strictly for business like that, tax them at a higher level. I think you should. And I think that would be a way to adjust that. And we want to make sure people can have a house. And, there's a lot of saying people can't afford houses. I've got, property in this area that is for sale. You can buy a brand new house for under $250,000, a 4-bedroom, 2-bath on a little bit of land. And, I think that's been blown out of proportion, now in high rent areas like New York, where they have the state and local taxes that are in the 15-20%, or California, where they're going to put in that extra tax. There's going to be a lot of homes available to buy out there in New York because of the socialist policies of their elected leaders.
We talked about this on our show on Monday when Fareed Zakaria made that statement on his show about that the blue cities are out of control. And we absolutely, you and I both agreed with that. And I wonder if our union can stay strong if they continue to be out of control, because I don't think we can. And Mandami never ceases to amaze you with this, but I want to play this video. This was in New York City during this last storm. These are police officers that responded to a call in Washington Square Park, which I'm extremely familiar with. I've been there many, many times when I used to live up there. And watch what happens
Were
to
you
them.
throwing snowballs?
No, I wasn't. And especially not at cops. But so watch this video and also Mandami's response to it.
Breaking news tonight related to the blizzard. A tense scene this afternoon when several New York City police officers were injured when they were pelted with chunks of snow in Washington Square Park. They were responding to a call about people who got on a roof inside the park during an organized snowball fight. The snow cut the officers on their faces badly enough that they actually went to the hospital. Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch calls the incident disgraceful and criminal.
Speeds close to, it looks like.
And there was even one part of another video I saw where a guy came up behind one of the cops and broke a chunk of ice over his head, Ted. But Mandami turns around and said, "Oh, these are just kids playing." I didn't see a single kid out there. It looked like a bunch of grown men to me doing that. I mean, I just don't understand that. I mean, the respect for cops, there's no respect, let alone fear of them. And just to me, I just don't see how our cities can continue to go along this line and the state of our union be strong. I just don't see it.
I agree with you 100%. And these weren't kids. I mean, this was organized. They called the police out there because they said there was this chaos going on in a large snowball fight. But once the cops the policemen got in the center of that, they became the target of the aggression. And I agree with you. Breaking a chunk of ice over anybody's head is very painful. And for Mandami to blow this off, oh, these are just kids. We're not going to press charges. Give me a break. This is what is coming your way, New York. And you guys for the people that voted him in, this is what you get. And when the police decide and the police union says, you know what? We can't protect our police because the city's not going to back us up. We're not going to have our people go in there. Let them have chaos like that for, a week or two and see how much they want the police back. And you're going to see it every time in these liberal cities. When it gets out of hand, they're going to look for the people that they chased away. And your question was, can a union remain strong if our cities are divided? Biblically, and Abraham Lincoln, a nation cannot stand divided upon itself, or a house cannot stand divided upon itself. And how much more division you want? It's like when Obama came in and we're going to fundamentally transform America. And you look at the transformations that happened under him to the end of the Biden era. How much more transformation do you want in America? And it wasn't just here in America, John. It was around the world because our policies went through our secretary or the State Department through USAID, which is now disbanded. I'm glad of that. But they were transmitting those policies of Obama's transformationally changes of America around the world. And it was isolating us and pushing people closer to China.
Well, Ted, we only got a couple minutes left, and I didn't put this in the notes, but I want to bring it up because to me, President Trump talked about standing for Americans versus illegal immigrants and all that. This is something a little bit different, but it's the same philosophy. Out in California, they released, or in the process of releasing this guy who now has been charged again, by the way, which is interesting, but he's like 64 years old. He was sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences because he kidnapped and raped children under 7 years of age, all of them, double figures, like 17 of them or something. And they released him, this parole board, because he's getting older. He's 64. And to me, I just have to ask people, can you really support this? Because this is part of a liberal blue area out in California. Because this is why I said earlier, I wish that there were some Democrats I could vote for. But how can you possibly support somebody like this getting out of prison that literally kidnapped and raped, that we know of, 17 children under 7 years old? I mean, how can you be for that, Ted?
You can't. The only thing that people that could be for that are people of the devil. I mean, that's satanic. And again, the difference between the Republican and the Democrats that President Trump pointed out so astutely was this kind of behavior. Had he called that out, they wouldn't have stood up. They would have, oh, he's being xenophobe or homophobe or whatever. This is unconscionable behavior. And for anybody to let somebody out of prison like that, that judge and the prosecutors who let this guy walk away, or the public defender who let this guy walk away, they should be held accountable. It's just like if a policeman does something that's illegal, they lose benefits, they can get sued. These judges, they need to have the same recourse to them. This garbage needs to end, and this is un-American. It's just unhumanitarian for this to happen. It's like Irina Zarinsky, her mother was up in there, and Trump had her as a guest, and the Democrats would stand for her because it wasn't politically correct to stand up for a black man that stabbed this lady to death because he was a victim of the system. The guy's a criminal, and I'll leave it at that. And he should never have been on the streets. And this guy that they're letting out should not be on the streets.
Yeah, but talking about somebody that got let out that they wouldn't stand for, they wouldn't stand for that guy from down in Venezuela who was released from being a political prisoner down there.
Yeah,
that came
the
up
grandfather.
and surprised his niece, I think, or granddaughter, whatever, there in the Capitol at the State of the Union speech. And so this is a guy who's an immigrant coming here to celebrate with an immigrant the freedom that he's gotten here in America, and they wouldn't stand for that. So I'm wondering what they would stand for, Ted, really, at this point.
That guy, I mean, that he would have been their poster child a couple of years ago. Here's a political prisoner being suppressed by an authoritarian regime, and Maduro was not duly elected. I mean, you talk about a fraudulent election. It has been, as Putin has been. And so here's a guy that's been suppressed. He gets out because of Trump's action, and they won't stand for him. So you ask, what do they stand for? They're standing for the division of America, and the more they can divide it, the more they're going to stand for it. And this is why they do not need to be in office. This is why 79 of them did not show up. And the ones that did, it was a pathetic showing. You said there were several people that looked like they wanted to stand up on the Democrat side, but they wouldn't. Big Al from North Florida, he was a state senator. I forget his last name. He was African American, and he went to stand up a couple times under Trump 1. You should have seen the Democrats around him basically pulling him down, shaming him, and then they primaried him and ran him out of office.
Unbelievable. Well, I hope you enjoyed the show.
Yep.
As much as we've enjoyed bringing it to you. Please like what we're doing. Share it far and wide. Become a supporter of the show. Call Freddie. Make that call. Hope you have a blessed, safe, glorious weekend. Take us out, Ted.
Yeah, enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the weather. It looks like we're going to get a little bit better weather. We're going to get some rain, and we're going to be adding some new sponsors. So be one of those. Take care. God bless. Share the word, and we'll see you next week.
And we'll be back at our regular time next week, 9 o'clock. Thank you very much.